Hello and welcome to the Media Center's Local Hero Awards series, in which we showcase 6 people from the Mid-Peninsula for outstanding achievement or contributions to the community. We solicited nominations and were especially looking for the unsung heroes. Each winner is an inspiration and each has a great story to tell. How is it that some people can overcome what seems like insurmountable tragedy and manage to find a life of even greater meaning? In 1978, Laura Barton became a quadriplegic, and that's only the beginning of her remarkable story. A story that ultimately involved a whole community, a community that sprang up thanks to Laura. She had been an accomplished musician, but after her neck was broken, she had to relearn to sing. Within a year, she was teaching classes, performing in choirs and recitals, tutoring, and soon opened a music studio of her own. She went on to complete a BS in Business Administration at USF. As a non-stop volunteer, she takes on many roles in her church and community, from event planning to everything musical, enriching and inspiring the lives of everyone she touches. Laura, it was 1978, and you were driving south with a work colleague. Tell me what happened.
Well, Lori, my friend, Lori Griswold, and I had just started a business, and so we were on our way to Los Angeles to go to a Music Teachers Association convention to sell our educational music games. And we just got onto Highway 5, driving down there when the back of the car started to shimmy, and we looked at each other and said, we better pull over. And in pulling over, the brakes didn't work, and we went up the embankment and turned over 2 times. Well, so Lori broke her collarbone. I broke my neck with the smashing down of the roof of the car.
What was your reaction to what happened there at the scene?
Well, actually, I don't remember from when we said we'd pull over until I was getting off a helicopter in on a gurney. But my friend Lori said that there were different people stopped, and one couple stopped, gathered our games, which were all over the freeway, and put them in their car and went down to the convention and took them to our booth mate there who sold them. Anyway, it was amazing, and I don't know who the people were, and I don't think she kept up with them, but just strangers. I was like some of the first people to help.
I was going to say, in a long list of people to help, I mean, your whole story starts right out with your remembering and acknowledging people who did a kindness.
Yes.
You then, wake up in a hospital. You are given a dire diagnosis. What was your reaction?
Well, first, when they said I wouldn't be able to, I'd be paralyzed the rest of my life, I thought, well, why did they save me? And then I also thought, I could have done this myself. I took a lot of risks in my early days. But then I thought, well, I guess God must have something for me to do. And we'll go on from here.
So your initial reaction was not, what a tragedy. It was, I've been saved to do something. What did you go through in the hospital? What was your therapy like?
Well, the therapy was first, I was on a striker frame, that they called it, and that was lying flat on kind of an ironing board looking thing with my head in traction. But it had to be turned every 2 hours. So they had it rotate around. First put another board on top of me, and then rotate it around. So I'm still in the same position, but looking down at the floor. So that was for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And then the next thing was they put on a body cast for another 6 weeks. And then after that, it was just physical therapy down on the mat kind of thing, and occupational therapy, where we worked at like how to feed myself and how to brush my teeth, how to write.
How long did therapy altogether take?
Well, I was in the hospital 6 months.
Wow. Were you overwhelmingly depressed?
Actually, not at all in the hospital. I think there were so many things to do. They sent in a psychologist at one point, but I said, don't send them again. and I was fine until I got out of the hospital. Then going home and seeing all the things that I couldn't do in my own home, yes, I was depressed.
How did you get through it?
Well, there were things to do. I started working right away. My boss had kept me on, and just the schedule of it, it takes a long time to get me up in the morning, and then going to work, then coming home, and then after not too long, I started teaching voice lessons again in the evening. So there wasn't a lot of time to think, but it was in the back of my mind, just this little depression going on.
And what was the role of people in your life?
Oh, wonderful. I mean, it was everything. At the hospital itself, right away, my boss got me a special phone that I could hook up so that I could call and talk to people all over the world while lying totally flat, not moving. I mean, it was amazing. And then he also started sending this, the daughter of a friend of mine, Raji Raman, to bring me things from the office to look at, and the mail from the office to look at while I'm on a striker frame still too. So I'm still working somewhat while I'm in the hospital. And then later on, when I was out of the traction and out of the body cast, he had me come to work a couple of days a week from the hospital. So,
Sounds like you got a lot of hands-on help, as it were. What about the help in here? How much did these people help you?
A lot of visitors. Like one of them did a little percussion concert for me when I was facing down, on the striker frame, and he was on the floor with all these instruments. Another, George, my boss, also. Well, he spirited me away when I was in the body cast in a wheelchair, and I wasn't supposed to leave, but took me out and went to have a hamburger or something. And the Hestermans had a birthday party for me in there, too. I mean, it was always something going on, and it was wonderful. A couple of ladies came every week to help feed me before I could feed myself. And
did you ever think of giving up?
no, besides, how could I give up? I mean, what could I do to not go along with what was going on?
So to what extent do you attribute maybe your attitude or your spirit to the people who rallied around you?
Well, what I attribute it to, is all those people who helped me. And then getting out of the hospital, even more people helped me. So, yeah, it's the take a village kind of thing.
Was that surprising to you? Were there any surprises in there?
Yeah, that whole thing was surprising to me, that so many people helped me. And I mean, out of the hospital, there were teams of volunteers. When I have to get catheterized every afternoon, and I still do, all these 40 years, still same thing. And that was always by volunteers. And one person headed that up and arranged who would come what day. There were people who drove me home from work. My attendant would drive me to work, and these different people volunteered and were trained by a friend who was a physical therapist, how to get me in and out of a car. And some people brought food. My sons were trained. to turn me and also to transfer me. And so when I got home, they were doing that. They were cooking. They were 12 and 14, but they cooked and they did their laundry, and they took turns turning me in the middle of the night as well.
Wow.
And one son, who stayed in the area, turned me until I got married in 2000. So that's a lot of years,
Wow.
turning me in the night.
What about your relationship with the church? Did that change?
It didn't change God-wise, but it changed as far as what I could do. And I had been a choir director there, but I couldn't really do that anymore. But I did sing in the choir for a while, which meant somebody had to carry me up these winding, narrow steps to the balcony and back down again, which was always interesting.
Getting all that help, how do you think that changed you as a person?
Well, it really changed me as far as being more of a people person. I might have been before, but I think I also became a little more outgoing because I felt like I needed to make people comfortable with me. So if people were not comfortable with me, I was the one who started talking.
For a while, you actually drove a van, right?
Yes.
Tell me about
For a
that.
lot of years. Yeah, it was interesting because after I was out of the hospital a while, I got this call, and somebody in Van Nuys, California, had made these special vans that someone that was as paralyzed as I was could drive. And so they evaluated me for that, and I ended up doing that and going down and being my wheelchair fitted in the van. And then they brought the van up, and I took a whole lot of driving lessons in it, got my license. And when you were asking me about being depressed, I kind of thought when I said I would like this van, that it would give me the opportunity to drive up north of San Francisco and drive over a cliff if I wanted to end my life. However, actually, once I started driving by myself, it was this wonderful, freeing feeling of I could be alone and go where I wanted to go. I mean, I never thought about the other thing again,
Really? Huh.
And yeah, that was pretty much the end of depression.
Wow. Another kind of transportation device, as it were, is your wheelchair.
Yeah.
You told me before about once when you were asked how it felt to be confined to a wheelchair.
Yeah.
What was your answer?
Well, I don't feel confined to a wheelchair. I feel freed by a wheelchair because the alternative is lying on the bed.
And you had a friend who, when you were newly in your wheelchair, said it's time to go out to lunch. She took you out to lunch with a friend of yours. You resisted at first. Why?
Well, actually, it was my friend had a boyfriend who was also quadriplegic and drove a van. And this is before my van came up. And so when we went out, he was a quadriplegic. He drove us to lunch, and there I was. I didn't have any choice. I really didn't want to be in public at that time. I didn't feel like being in public with my wheelchair. But that really got me used to being out there. And besides, if he could do it, then I guess I should do it too.
Again, a friend comes to your rescue.
Yes.
Tell me about that process of being looked at differently when you're in a wheelchair. It must be huge.
Yeah, well, and it was a big change. At that time, in '79 or so, it was, people didn't make eye contact with me, and it was pretty uncomfortable. And that's why I would try to start conversations, because people would just try to avoid looking at me and pull their children away if they seemed curious.
Really?
And by now, 40 years later, it's totally different.
Really? Has it changed that much?
Yes, a lot. I mean, people smile at me, and we, you know, to strangers. Mm-hmm. And if a situation comes up, they'll ask if I need help, which is a big thing. I think like all different disabled people would feel the same way, that you just want to be talked to as though you're standing up like everyone else, or that if you just like a regular person, and also not have them be condescending and come up and pat you on the head and say, "Oh, it's so nice, my dear, to see you out," you know. And it's like, well, I'm out all the time.
Right.
But anyway, it's changed a lot.
I want to talk about your music. How hard was it for you to relearn to sing?
I think I might not have even tried, except for another friend who was my voice teacher. And she came over to see me not too long after I was out of the hospital, pushed my wheelchair up to the piano and said, "Let's sing." And I'm feeling like, I can barely talk, you know, like, how am I supposed to sing? But she got me started, and we just did exercises, and it's the same technique that I used before when I sang, basically, except I only have one muscle, my diaphragm, and so that had to get lots stronger. It took about 3 years, I think. But she, I know after she got me just doing exercises, she got me singing song, and then she got my accompanist to come over, and we started working on, this is over a long period of time, and was singing a German song. It's called the song Cycle by Schumann, that has a group of songs, one after the other, telling a story. And so then she said, well, you know, we should invite some people over. So I invited all my little old lady German friends to come. And we did. We performed this piece. I was a little weak and took lots of extra breaths, but it felt really good. Felt really good. So I was back to singing, and I also started teaching again, too.
What does music do for you, especially given what you've been through?
I think what it does for a lot of people, it just takes me to another world. I mean, you don't think about pain or a situation or anything when you're singing or listening to music.
What does the process of teaching others do for you?
Well, it's actually sharing that same feeling of being in another place, and I just love to watch people improve, you know, in their singing. That's why I do it, and exposing them to a lot of different kinds of music.
Has your attitude toward music in general, or specifically with respect to performance, has that changed?
Yes, in the performance area, I think since I've been in a wheelchair, I have not been nervous at all about singing, where I used to just every once in a while feel totally nervous. And I think it's because my focus is different. Instead of being on me, I mean, I figure I already am in a wheelchair and don't look that great, you know, so just forget that part, and focusing on getting the message of the song over to the audience. It's made a big difference in that respect.
In general, are there any, and if so, what are the biggest silver linings?
I think the biggest silver lining was having only one girlfriend before this accident and having like 40 girlfriends afterwards. I mean, there were at least like 45 different people who have been volunteering and cathing me all these years. And one came like every Friday, or Sala Raman, every Friday for 25 years.
Wow.
And the other people, there's two left who are just retiring. They're the last people who have done it all the way from the beginning. That means 40 years worth of coming over and volunteering.
Not that anybody would ever wish such a thing on anybody, but are there parts of your life that are better now? More?
Well, that part. And I've had a lot of fun just repaying them. I've had these ladies' days for quite a few years where I invited 40 or so ladies to do some particular thing, rent a bus, go to San Juan Bautista. I mean, just all different things on a Hungarian day, just something different every year, usually April. So we called it Enchanted April.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I think it's just the friendship that's been different.
Now, this was not the only health challenge you've had. You went through a very difficult divorce. You had a problem with lungs. You've had a lot of physical, medical problems. Where does the accident and the initial quadriplegia, where does that rank in terms of worst thing that ever happened?
It's funny. I don't think of the accident as being worst or best thing that ever happened. It just happened. I was, and I know I was close to death at that point. And then another time, this lung thing that you brought up with, yeah, I was close at that time too. The other ones were more like with the cancer. I had lymphoma at one point and I had breast cancer. It was just kind of go with the flow. You know, okay, you have this, here, what do we do? Okay, we'll do this and see what happens. I mean, just going with the flow. But the last lung thing is down to the wire where we were actually updating my will and stuff and I was ready to go. But my prayer was that it be God's will, whatever happens. But my favorite would be living. I mean, that was pretty much where I was, and I did live.
Do you think that having that accident helped you approach all these other challenges differently?
Yeah, I think so. With it, going with the flow.
Yeah. You occasionally will talk to students. You'll go around to schools. What is your message for them?
Usually I would talk with them about change because in elementary school age children, and they all have some change in their life. I think the biggest thing for them is like divorce of their parents or moving, but then there are medical, all different kinds of change. And I guess I was telling them that there's nothing wrong with being sad when there's change. Even sometimes when it's good change, it'll be upsetting. But then to look at it kind of as a challenge and an adventure, like finding out what you can do about whatever the problem is. Maybe you can think up something that nobody else has thought of. And, so just thinking of it as an adventure.
What a wonderful example. We're out of time. Thank you so much, and congratulations on this award.
Thank you.
Do you know someone who has overcome significant hardship and has an inspiring story to tell? Someone who has sacrificed or given over and above to the community and deserves some recognition? If so, please contact us with your nomination for next year's Local Hero Awards. To find out more about our local heroes and to watch interviews with all the winners, visit our website, midpenmedia.org. At the Mid-Peninsula Community Media Center, you can make your own videos and television programs and take classes in all aspects of media production. You can also hire our professional services team. To find out more about that, go to mcproservices.com. Congratulations to all our winners, and thank you for watching.